All right. Well, hello, everyone. Today I have Heather with me. And not only is Heather a fantastic and busy mom of four, she is also fascinated by the human brain and how it relates to human behavior. She does speaking engagements around the community and has offered to speak a few minutes today on anxiety. And she has specifically targeted this to our teen group. So we are so excited to have you. Welcome, Heather, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. So I think anxiety is something that we are hearing a lot about because there's so much uncertainty right now because of COVID. But I want to talk specifically about how anxiety and stress affects the teen population and those anxiety is going to affect all of us, but my examples will center around things that are going on for high schoolers and college students. So first I just wanted to address all of these poor seniors who have had their senior year just turned upside down and how frustrating and sad that is. And I want all of them to know that it's perfectly fine and acceptable for them to be sad. This is super disappointing. And they are getting to miss out on things that other seniors aren't getting to miss out or haven't missed out on. So that's my first advice. Be sad. And it's okay to be sad about this. It is disappointing. The other component with this is for colleges. A lot of you are applying for colleges or have applied for colleges, and how much that affects our emotions. Some of us might have an idea that there's one specific college that we have to get into. And if we don't get into that one college, then it can mean a host of things. We can make it mean that we're not smart enough to get into that college, or that we didn't get good enough grades and that's why we didn't get into that college of our choice. But the decisions that go into what college you get accepted into has so many different factors. And I caution people to not make it mean that they aren't good enough and that's why they didn't get into that college. So many other possibilities that could be. I think another thing that can induce a lot of fear and anxiety with this age group is just how we will be perceived by other people. And this could be when we have to public speak, either in school or at church functions, that a lot of anxiety that can come with that is that someone will judge what they're saying and not agree with it. And that can cause anxiety, or that they may feel that they don't know enough about that topic and they won't want to feel, and they're not comfortable speaking about that. I do have 4 kids. My older 2 are 15 and 12, and they're both girls. And we have a lot of ups and downs based on how we look. And I think that this does not just go for teenage group. This goes for all of us. And I think we sometimes think that this just goes for women, but I think that young boys and men still struggle with the way that we look and how people are perceiving us based on how we look, and that can create a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I'm just trying to give examples all over the board of what can cause an anxiety, and then I will talk about what actually is causing the anxiety, because having a zit on your forehead when you go to homecoming is not the anxiety. I know it seems like it, and it seems like you're really perfect if you didn't have the zit on your forehead when you went to homecoming. But there's just going to be something else. Maybe you overheard your friends talking about you, or maybe the guy that you have liked since middle school asked your best friend out. All of these things can create so much anxiety and fear and worry in us. And the reason that I'm spending so much time in these examples is because I want the listeners to see if they related to any of those examples and notice how their body reacted. So some of you could have gotten a pit in your stomach. Some of you could have like clenched up your fists or your shoulders. We physically react to anxiety. And it has a little bit to do with our fight or flight instinct, but it's our fight or flight instinct gone wrong. So I want to now just teach very briefly basic what our brain is doing and why these types of situations can cause us so much discomfort and so much fear and sadness and just worry. So the first part is just how our brains were developed. And so we have different parts of our brain. What we know as the oldest part of our brain is in charge of our survival instincts. And the first overall surviving instinct that we have is that we avoid pain, whether that is through physical pain or even emotional pain. But if we go back to our early ancestors, most of that avoiding pain was physical pain. If they needed to be able to keep themselves alive with shelter and food, there were very real physical dangers that our brains had to develop and learn survival strategies. That was great in that time period when we had to run from animals for our lives. Perfect thing to develop. And it has continued to develop all these thousands of years. But now we're introducing avoiding pain emotionally. And we react to it the same way as we do a physical pain or a physical emergency. So just to keep it real basic, if early hunter-gatherers were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, that part of our brain that tells us that we need to run and flee and get safe is the same part of our brain that reacts when our friend says something bad about us. And we go into that, this is terrible, I don't want to feel this, I have to react to this mode. That's one of the overall instincts. The other one is to seek pleasure. And the third one is to conserve energy. And even if we break down that seeking pleasure, again, if we're avoiding pain, we're going to seek pleasure so that we don't feel the negative emotions. And even conserving energy, that looks like we don't want to work hard, because working hard can be painful. Whether if it's exercise and we're working hard physically and our body is in pain physically, or if we're working hard through something that is mentally challenging. All going to be things that our brain is at like a default setting to avoid. But our brains have grown and we have progressed, and we now have our prefrontal cortex. And that is our much more logical part of our brain. And we want to try to make more decisions from that part of our brain. So when we do have these stressors that come into our life, I want to be able to give the listeners very specific things that they can do when they start to feel anxiety come. And the very first thing is to recognize it. Now, I am someone who has separation anxiety, and I have had separation anxiety since as long as I can remember. I got my first ulcer in my stomach when I was 8. That is incredibly young for someone to get an ulcer from worrying. So I very much know anxiety. And that's the very first thing that we need to do, is to recognize it. I feel my worry in my stomach, where there have been many times where immediately I think a thought where I'm worried about a loved one's health, or I'm worried about my own health, and immediately I feel it in my stomach and I can throw up like within seconds. So our body reacts very quickly to our thoughts. And that actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. That's something I really want everybody to understand is we're trying to avoid feelings. And to be able to avoid feelings, we have to go back and look at the thoughts. So we got to know that the thought comes before the feeling. So the first step is recognizing it. When you feel butterflies in your stomach, when you just feel a little anxious and a little nervous, I want you to remember what you've learned about your brain and that its default setting is to keep you safe. And I want you to not get mad and judge it. I wish that I didn't do this. This isn't the reaction that I wanted. We want you just to recognize it. Oh, I'm feeling nervous. This is a little scary. And to tell yourself, it is okay to be scared and that your reaction to it is a very normal human response and that it's okay. So when I was first working through my separation anxiety, like I said, I have 4 kids, and I was really bad about going on trips with my husband because I didn't want to leave my kids. And the first time we left, it was really hard for me. And the night before, we were going to leave early in the morning, and so I was tucking all of the kids in. And of course, my brain goes to all these crazy thoughts. This is going to be the last time I tuck them in because something crazy is going to happen when we go on vacation. So I think that thought very naturally. That's just a path that my brain likes to take. But I recognize it. That's what I want you to do, recognize it. And I said to myself, oh, this is anxiety. I'm going to be doing something new, and my brain doesn't know what's going to happen. So it's panicking, telling me that something bad is going to happen so that I don't go. I don't want you to listen to that. I just want you to recognize it, that it's your brain trying to keep you safe. Thank it. Thanks, brain. I think I'll be okay going on a vacation. It is okay that I go on vacation. My kids are going to be with their sister or my sister. It's fine. Recognize it. I talked a little bit about it in this first one, but I want you to be curious about it. Being curious just means that we're not judging it. We're not saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. No, you should feel this way. You're a human being. It's totally fine and normal. Nothing has gone wrong because you're worried or scared about something. Even if you're worried or scared about something that maybe 100 other people wouldn't be worried or scared about, that doesn't matter. You're worried or scared about it, and that's okay. And to be curious to why. Look back in your history. Be compassionate about yourself. And then once you do those things, be self-compassionate, understand your history and why this is hard for you. Now here's the key difference that's really going to help with combating anxiety. And this is the key. When you recognize it, you name it, this is anxiety, this is fear, you get curious about what is causing it, and then you do what you want to do. So with my example of me going on vacation, I want to go on vacation with my husband. The kids need to have time away from their parents, and we need to have time just together. But my brain was really trying to convince me that I needed to stay home. There were several times, even as a kid with separation anxiety, that I listened to that part of my brain. And I didn't go to girls' camp if my mom couldn't go with me. And I didn't go to a friend's house to go on sleepovers. And that fear of leaving just grew and grew and grew because I listened to it. It doesn't stop until you prove it wrong. So our actions are what is really going to increase our confidence in ourselves and help us to overcome these anxieties. There was a study done with different fears, like some people that were afraid of heights and some people that were afraid of water. And so they had a group of people who had these fears, and then they divided that group in half with people who had experiences where maybe they fell from something high, or maybe they had an accident in a lake or a pool. And the people who had the greater fear of water or heights had no experience with those things. The people who had a much less lower level of fear had near drowning experiences or had fallen off of something high. So what that tells us, what the study tells us, is our brain makes it much worse in our head. And the only way that we can combat that is by taking the action that we want. So that's going to be scary. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's okay. It doesn't, I think, with our modern society, and I do think this time that we have with COVID right now is teaching us this, that we have a lot of luxuries in our life right now, and a lot of things are made easy for us. So we think that when something's hard, that something's gone wrong. And that idea is what is hurting us. If something's hard, that is what's normal. Having something be easy is not what's normal. And so I just want you to remember that when something is hard and something is scary, it's okay. Lean into it. It is a normal process, but to take the actions that you want to take the action that aligns with your goals and your values. And the more often that we can do that, the greater your confidence will grow, and the greater that you will see that fear that you have diminish. So I told you my separation anxiety started as a kid. It really did. And once I got married, it moved from me being scared of leaving my mom to being scared of leaving my husband to then being scared of leaving my children. Now, I still get those anxious thoughts whenever there's time where my husband has to leave for work or I need to leave those kids. And I still get that butterfly in my stomach and I still get nervous, but I can talk myself out of it. It doesn't spiral. It does take time. I do go on vacations now without my children, and it has been great. But it takes practice and to start with something small, and then let it grow. A good way to know of where you want to start is what I've said before about your values. What do you want out of life? And that will help you to know what action you need to take. A couple other, well, let me see the time. Okay, just one more thing with anxiety, and it was a little bit with the first step of recognizing it, that I want you to breathe when you're trying to name it and think about where it is. Different people are going to feel it in different places in their body. I had mentioned I feel it in my stomach. And so name it, recognize it, and breathe into it. And that the extra oxygen to your brain really does calm your brain down and help you to get out of that default mode in your brain up into your prefrontal cortex to be able to make a more deliberate decision. So I hope that helps, and I hope that everybody is able to get a little bit more familiar and accepting of the hard. I know a lot of people say it, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable is really where we see the growth in ourselves and where we can create the life that we want to create. That's it.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was wonderful. Those are great tips. And I will be sure to include some information on Heather in the comments so you know where to find her. And if maybe she's doing something locally and you're local here, you can come and watch and learn from her. So we appreciate you so much.
No problem.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.